What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I'm a musician and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, I thank you so very much for being here. Thank you for rocking with me to the end of this video. Thank you for sending this video to a friend. Thank you for going to Spotify, Tidal, Pandora, Apple Music, wherever you like to get your music at. YouTube, it's on there too, on Bandcamp. Thank you for going to those places and listening to the new music. There's new Zamboni Funk music, which has just dropped this week. I am so proud. I'm so very excited to see it out in the world. It is, it's a trying time out here in the world, and I made some music that can help to support a gratitude practice, just being happy and grateful to be in the world, to be a part of this web of life. And it is free to you. All you have to do is go and listen to it. If you would add it to, if you'd like heart it on your app and like add it to a playlist or 7 or something like this, then I would love if you would do that. Thank you so much for doing that. I am just like so pleased that it's out there in the world. You can also send a tip. You can get an astrology reading or something like that. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this week, the main thing to remember this week is that the information is not good. So let that guide all of the actions. The information sucks this week. So one of the reasons I say that is because Mercury is stationing retrograde this week. So Mercury has been headed for this retrograde for a little while. I've been talking about it being conjunct Mars and slowing down and all this sort of stuff, right? So there's been like, with that conjunction to Mars, there's been sharp words, fighting words, and difficult communications and this sort of thing, right? As Mercury slows down, then that heat and irritation is still there because Mars is still in Virgo for most of this week, and then is going to turn around and start moving the other direction. So whenever we see Mercury stationing, especially during the stationary part of the retrograde, then there's a lot of possibility for not only the irritation and anxiety and overthinking and stuff that can come with conjunction to Mars, but then also miscommunications, delays, misunderstandings, so there's like all of this irritation and pressure that can come with the Mars thing, and then that looks like it wants to exacerbate this whole situation. So as like things become delayed, then you might get into a place where you're like hurrying and trying to like say the thing quickly, and then when you say the thing quickly, then it gets heard in a way that you didn't necessarily mean or something like that, and then that sort of like compounds. So there's like all of this compounding struggle going on here, right? Then we can also notice that Mars at the end of, Mercury as well, because Mercury is pretty close by. I think Mercury's stationing at like 23 degrees of Virgo or something like this. But Mars also this week is opposite to Neptune in Pisces at the end of Pisces. So all of this stuff that's happening at the end of Virgo is opposite to Neptune in Pisces. So that is, again, confounding. There's a sense of like confusion or something like this. Usually when I think about making Mercury, Neptune aspects like useful or helpful or something like this, then I tend to think about like, you want to use that for poetry or song, or you might be able to do something like psychopomp-ish, if you need to help to sing somebody over the river or something like this. Like that is a good use of Mercury Neptune dynamics, right? But for the practicality that Virgo tends to try to operate with, right? So Virgo is a space in the sky where typically things, it's where we go for edits. It's where we go for getting into the technical details of things and coming to an understanding, making those things intelligible so as to be able to make stuff work a little later, right? So in that space, in the space where like the tiny details matter and this kind of thing, right? We can think about how like if we're shooting in a long trajectory, then even the smallest adjustment here on it, like close by, can make for a very different destination point down in the long term, right? And so that's what we're looking at here, right? With Mercury being confused by not only a station retrograde, but also by an opposition to Neptune. That looks like the smallest details can get you to a place where you didn't expect to be, right? So that looks like it's going on here. Mars opposite to Neptune at the same time looks like acting, right? Because that's what Mars does. Mars is the planet of action, of irritation and anger and this kind of thing, but also of like getting up and actually doing the thing. Sweat equity is where Mars lives, right? So actually doing the thing on confused or bad information. It looks like what wants to happen here, right? So be aware of that. This whole week looks like a time where things are deeply confusing, and it's going to be easy to, especially if you feel delayed, you feel the time crunch, you feel irritated with people you've been irritated with for a number of weeks now. Any of this kind of thing might be going on here, and that might put you in a place where you're like, fuck this, I'm just moving on it. And then it turns out that you got to go back and like do things another time or something like this. So be aware of all that. Schedule in some cushion time wherever you can. If you can sort of take things off of your schedule and do less, then that is going to be prime time. That's going to be what you really want to do. Of course, that's not usually what happens during Mercury retrograde, and that's why things like get kind of out of hand at this kind of moment. But if you have the luxury of doing that, of like taking things a little bit slower or scheduling in some cushion time, do that. Now we can also notice that we are getting toward the end of the Venus retrograde here. Now, that is very exciting. Venus isn't going to station direct just yet, but this week we do get to see that Venus in Leo is going to make an exact square to Jupiter in Taurus. That looks like it wants to be helpful. Not only does that look like it wants to be helpful, but we're starting to see Venus getting away from the sun a little bit, right? So rather than being super close up in that sun and getting burnt up and like having to really deal with the heat and intensity of that purification process, we can think about like going to a sauna or something like that and like sweating it out, and that being purifying, but it also being deeply uncomfortable. That's where Venus has been for a little while, right? So Venus is now moving away from that sort of situation. It's like opening the sauna door and being like, oh, I made it, right? And so then also to see that square from Jupiter looks like it wants to be like hopeful or something like this. It looks like a moment where it's like, okay, like maybe it has been worth it to go through all of this. Maybe it's been worth it to like navigate all of the breaks and the troubles and the delays and the reevaluation and the refocusing and the reinvention and all of this that has taken place. Reinvention is not easy, right? I would prefer to just be able to be the way that I am. Why can't I just be this way? I guess I'm not getting the outcomes that I wanted. I guess I'm going to have to reevaluate what really matters to me. Do I even want those outcomes? Do I want to stay and do what I'm doing here and not get those outcomes? Would that be more valuable to me, or would it be more valuable for me to change up what I'm doing in order to move toward different outcomes, right? That's been the whole Venus retrograde thing, right? So to go through that difficult, treacherous reinvention process has been difficult and treacherous, but then to see that square to Jupiter this week, and then that square like doesn't really get out of orb. We just kind of hang out in this square for a while. Venus is going to station direct at 12 degrees of Leo. So the square happens at 15 degrees. And then so to the station happens at 12. Jupiter's going to still be at 15 at that point and then move forward. So that's within 3 degrees for some weeks now, right? So this looks like a moment where some of that Jupiterian big picture wisdom, maybe it's going to be all right. Maybe we've been actually moving toward improvement this whole time. I know it's been rough, but look, we're going to make it. It's going to be okay. Maybe the sky isn't falling. Maybe that's just rain. Don't you need some rain sometimes? Wouldn't it get too hot if it wasn't rainy sometimes? Don't we need some water to fall out of the sky? I know it's hard to deal with, but look, this is ultimately moving towards some kind of thriving, or moving forward at least. Venus still moving backwards, but moving, through it in some kind of important way. That looks like it can be nice. So remember that. Remember to be present with your dreams and all this, and don't move unless you need to. Appreciate y'all. Check you next time.